Good evening, afternoon, wherever you're from. Sean, it's daytime for you, buddy, right?
Yeah, it's broad daylight in Seattle.
In Seattle, Washington. Guys, welcome. My name is Chris Cole. This is We the Parents podcast. This is episode 22, and I have a very special acquaintance, friend of mine, a very helpful human being, attorney Sean Kuhlmeyer, and I hope I pronounced your name right, because I don't think I've ever said it.
That's good enough.
Kuhlmeyer, can you correct me?
Well, if you speak German, it's something different. But the funny part, I'm not German.
Well, my last name is German. It's just Cole.
Yeah, okay.
So it's English. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
We're all mutts, Sean.
We'll go with Kuhlmeyer.
Coal miner. We'll be coal miner. So, Sean, as you've watched my podcast before, I like to let my guests introduce themselves because nobody knows my guests better than themselves, and I'll probably screw up the facts anyway. So, Sean, tell us who you are, tell us what you're doing on my show, and go ahead.
Okay. So hi, I'm Sean Kuhlmeyer. I'm a personal injury attorney in Seattle, and for the last for almost 5 years now, I have been going through a high conflict divorce with my ex-wife's attorney is, in my opinion, the most unethical attorney I've ever seen in 15 years of practicing law, both in Seattle and attending law school in New York City. And her tactics and her behaviors have turned what should have been a relatively simple divorce that was in both our son's best interest and in my ex-wife's best interest into a high conflict disaster nightmare that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, cost us probably all of our money, and has spawned litigation in multiple courts. At last count, it's a case in the King County Family Court, a tort case. I sued my ex-wife and her attorney and her law partner. That case, action in federal bankruptcy court. The tort case where I sued my ex-wife, that's been dismissed under a brand new statute in Washington State, modeled on a Tennessee statute called for abusive litigation. Which has never been interpreted either in Washington or in Tennessee. So we're off to the Court of Appeals again in the tort case. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that case could wind up all the way in the United States Supreme Court because of fundamental due process issues. To say it's a nightmare is to put it really, really mildly. And in that process, I haven't seen my son in just over 2 years. My ex-wife has filed at last count 8 or 9 false and frivolous police reports. I've been criminally charged with violations of the restraining order she lied to get twice. Both cases have been dismissed because she made false allegations. In one case, I was 5 miles away from where she said that I was. She's filed 2 bar complaints against me. 1 bar complaint is still pending, and it is largely based upon language that her unethical attorney forged in court orders. I'm not kidding. Literally forged court orders, and then covered up that fraud on the court with subsequent orders that basically related back to that language and said the court previously found this, but when you go all the way back to what the court previously found, it ends in her literally forging a court order before she puts it on the desk of our judge.
Yeah.
So, when you get with when I come out and I start telling this story, people are like, this is just nuts. And I'm like, well, yeah, and unfortunately there's absolutely no way to reconcile the facts of what we can prove has happened in my case with what's going on without including some words that most lawyers just don't want to include into the words like corruption and collusion and unethical behavior and
human
fraud.
human behavior being bad.
Right. Well,
it happens.
The sort of behavior that you see what happens when when there are motivations that don't really line up with what the family court is supposed to do, and with also that you favor unethical, greedy divorce attorneys creating conflict in order to create attorney fee billing and make themselves rich. I mean,
wait a minute. I gotta stop you there. You're an attorney, and you're admitting that.
Yeah,
because it's true.
Well, it absolutely is true. So, well, all right. So let's get to that in just a second. Let me start with telling my story, because part of my goal is to tell my story about what's happened, and then as along the way to say, now this is endemic of a bigger problem, and this is how it happens in other places. And if you're going through this sort of stuff, this is what you need to look for, and these are some of the pitfalls.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, absolutely. Attorneys, unethical, greedy, rapacious. I like $9 words. They create conflict. They exacerbate the conflict that already exists between the parents. Then they create new conflict in order to polarize the parents and create pitting them against each other, because that generates attorney fee billing hours, which allows them to bill their client. What's happening is these unethical attorneys are manipulating their clients, getting them to either believe something or just giving into their base desires for revenge or anger or to get back at this or whatever, and fueling that fire in order to profit themselves.
Wow. That's real?
Yeah, that's real.
I love it when attorneys come on my show and call out their profession and say that there's bad actors. You just, it's like a release. It's like, thank you for saying that. Thank you, God.
All right.
Thank you,
I'm
Sean.
a lawyer. So I'm a lawyer. I'm gonna give you the disclaimer now, right? Because you wouldn't be happy unless I gave you a disclaimer, right?
Sure.
So everything I say on this podcast, unless I'm backing it up with evidence, I'm going to say it's a statement of my opinion. So when I say that my ex-wife's attorney, Karma Zeike, is the most unethical attorney I've ever seen, right? That's a statement of opinion. So far, she hasn't been adjudged, unethical yet. So I'm not going to say she is unethical. I'm going to say it's my opinion she's unethical.
Right, because the court is the one who determines fact, correct?
Right, or the Bar Association.
Yes.
Right. Okay, but we'll get to that one in a minute. All right. So so I sent you some stuff, right? Because in an ideal world, how you would win an argument is with evidence. But I wanted to start with our fun photo of this is me.
I think that's a lot of us, right?
Right.
Oh my God.
We're like trying. I show this to people all the time, and I'm like, okay, so I'm this guy, all right?
Yeah.
And the story I'm going to tell you just sounds, insane, right? And you have to sort of like look beyond that, and you have to start seeing all these red lines, and you're like, well, wow, he's really onto something there.
And I want you, while you're explaining things, as people jump on and off and whatever, I want you to keep reminding people, by the way, I am an attorney.
Right.
I want them to know that what you're explaining is coming from an attorney.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the other piece of this puzzle is that longer term, and part of why I'm going to tell my story here, longer term, what I'm hoping to do is to teach people how to research their opposing counsel, how to find out what their playbook is, to protect yourself from that. Because I did that fairly early in my case, and I think I would be in jail today if I hadn't done that.
Right.
Also, how to ultimately write bar complaints against unethical divorce attorneys that get action. I don't necessarily mean that means that all of these attorneys are going to be disbarred, but what I mean is that the Bar Association takes that seriously, right? How do you do those two fundamental things? How do you find out what your unethical divorce opposing counsel's playbook is, And B, how do you ultimately expose that? And then in a way that the bar associations ultimately have to take that seriously. Because, and here's part of the reason why I'm doing that, is because in California right now, over the last several years, the California bar has gone through a series of scandals. Some of it has been publicly in the news, and some of it hasn't been so publicly in the news. But right now, there's a massive scandal happening with an attorney called I always pronounce his name wrong. Gibaldi Gerald. I actually have
Gibraltar. We'll go with Gibraltar.
No, I actually have his name up here. His name is Tom Giraldi. Giraldi.
Garibaldi.
Well, Giraldi.
Okay.
And the reason why you probably will know who he is because he was the lawyer from Aaron Brockovich.
Oh.
And you can actually do a quick search on him. Los Angeles. He's in Los Angeles County, and there's this massive scandal happening right now because over his 30 or 40-year career, by ingratiating himself with people who work inside the California Bar Association, he's been able to escape discipline that happened to other lawyers for the similar things inside that same process. The point being is that, it would be a good thing if divorce attorneys across this country, and particularly the, say, 5 or 6 bad apples that exist in every city, were suddenly the recipients of bar complaints that happen repetitively because, they're engaging in behavior that they really shouldn't be doing. Okay, so with that, I'll just dive right in. So my story started in 2016. My ex-wife and I, her name is Isabel. We were together. We were married for just under 16 years, and we were together for 20 years. We, generally speaking, had a good relationship. I loved her very much. I still care very deeply for her. Ultimately, in 2016, our relationship needed to change to something, to a different model because of, issues that were going on, predominantly with her. On a national podcast, I'm going to, be respectful of what that is. But, things needed to change. It wasn't outside of the realm of possibility that her and I would, patch things up and stay together. But, we definitely needed some form of different model.
Yeah.
I moved out in 2000 and basically October 1st of 2016. And between that time period and say April of 2017, we had a really good relationship. I mean, as good as you can have when you've separated. We were still doing family activities together. As soon as I got an apartment, our son started, sleeping over at my house. We had a 50-50 residential schedule where we were making joint decisions. We were on our way to a soft landing. As a matter of fact, we negotiated and agreed 50-50 parenting plan with joint decision making. Yeah. And her first attorney, this is important. This will be important later. Her first attorney sends the agreed final parenting plan to me as an offer of settlement. And I said, I agree. Now fulfill your responsibilities that you said that you would do. At some point after that, she went and her initial attorney consulted with the firm's big dog, who specializes in high conflict cases. And I don't know exactly what it was that they said in that meeting, but I'm able to put together a lot of things that must have happened inside of that meeting. And inside of that meeting, Miss Zeike, which is who ultimately would become my ex-wife's attorney, Miss Zeike must have told my ex-wife of a couple of things. number one, she must have told her, if you sign this thing, this 50-50 agreement, A, you'll have to work with Sean. You'll have to compromise with Sean. You'll have to work with Sean. You'll have to raise your son cooperatively with him. B, you will get no or next to no child support because you've got a 50-50 plan. And both of you, at least at the time, roughly make about the same amount of money.
Right.
Right. So there won't be a massive shift and you won't get child support. So what she did is she told her, you're not going to have control over how your kid is raised. You gotta share that with his father.
You got to be an adult.
You got to be an adult.
Terrible.
Right. And you're not going to get paid, enormous amounts of money and have, power and control over your ex-husband. Then she told her, she must have said something to her along the lines of re-educating her as to what domestic violence is. Right? And said to her, well, if you allege domestic violence, I can get you whatever it is that you want. You want full custody, I can get that for you. You want more of the family assets, I can get that for you. You want him to have to pay you child support, I can get that for you. You want to not have to deal with him, you want to put him in his place, you want a pound of flesh from him, whatever it is that she said to her, right? She'd basically be able to say the golden ticket to doing that is to allege domestic violence.
Now, can I stop you?
Yeah.
This is where you say that you're an attorney and you know for a fact that attorneys do this. Is that correct? Not that you're saying that you know for sure that it was done, but this is that it does happen and that you feel in your opinion that that is what took place based on the fact that you did have everything worked out and then all of a sudden it flipped.
Sure.
Okay.
Let me give you some real specific examples about that. When I was doing some research on this, I wound up on a website. I believe it was in Ontario, and that website said it said particularly targeting toward the people who claim I'm a hidden victim of domestic violence, meaning that I have no evidence of my domestic violence because it happened behind closed doors. Okay. When you wind up on that website, right, it says, these are the things you need to do in order to be able to hopefully prove that you're a victim of domestic violence. Now I know because I took evidence. Okay. I know how to build an evidence chain.
Sean's an attorney.
So if you can't tell from
that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to be like, Sean's an attorney.
Okay. Right. So, I know because it took evidence, right? How you go about doing this. So I wind up on this website. This website says, if you're going to prove that you're, if you're a hidden victim of domestic violence, these are the things you want. You want photographs. You want recordings. Doesn't really matter whether they're legal or illegal, whether you're one party consent or not party consent. You might want to take the risk of making the recordings. Diary entries, because there's a specific rule of evidence that talks about whether or not something is admissible. The statement inside of a diary entry, right? Even though it might be hearsay, you want diary entries. You want things that are done contemporaneously with what's going on. Photographs, recordings, right? Witness statements, emails, substantiated CPS reports, right? Police reports. These are the sorts of things that you want to be able to, objective things, or at least semi-objective things that you want to be able to say, here's the evidence of my domestic violence. I had all of that related to the issues that my ex-wife was dealing with that I'm not going to go into here out of respect for her and her privacy. But I had photographs and recordings and diary entries and emails and about issues that we were grappling with inside of our relationship that was driving the conflict and the reason why our relationship needed to change, right? I had that objective evidence of it. In contrast, she had nothing about me. There's not a single, there's not a single substantiated CPS report of, child abuse. No police reports. No, diary entries. No, no photographs of bruises, none of that evidence. It just did not exist because domestic violence didn't happen from me to her. It just didn't happen.
She wasn't even smart enough to punch herself in the face.
Right. No Fight Club scene there.
God.
Right. Okay.
Silly woman.
So does hidden domestic violence happen? Sure. Right. Okay. But she literally had no evidence of it. But I had all of the contrasting evidence that existed that said, these things happened, right? But she didn't have any evidence. Well, none of that really mattered because, she was the first one to file. She filed for divorce. Her attorney was, came out of the gate, alleging domestic violence, child abuse, assault, battery, perjury, fabrication of evidence, tax fraud. That was all in her initial motion. Right?
Tax fraud. Which has nothing to do with domestic violence, but she threw that in there.
Right.
Did she say that you mix your colors and your whites too in your laundry?
No, right. Yeah.
What?
Right. Well, it's the age-old adage of throw all of the brown stuff at the wall.
Uh-huh.
Right? And see which one sticks and which one slides. And the stuff that sticks, you run with it. But the real problem with that is this, okay? Is that first of all, remember I talked about how she's creating conflict. Okay? She's exacerbating the conflict that already exists, and then she's creating conflict. So my ex-wife had her feelings about me, whatever they were. Okay? Angry at me, felt like, I was going to take advantage of her because I was a lawyer. Whatever they were, whatever her personal feelings were, her attorney is feeding that storyline, right? Yeah. So that my wife is like, wrapping herself around an axle about that narrative. And at the same time, she's going to come along and she's going to pour a whole bunch of gasoline and napalm onto a fire by doing things like making false allegations. Now, here's what's important. If you're a carpenter or a restaurant guy, or maybe I don't know, doctor, or work in the medical field, a whole host of jobs. If someone were to make these sorts of allegations against you and you just sort of just ignored it, right? That might be something that you could just move on with your life and your career. Okay? But I'm a freaking attorney.
Yeah, you can't be a biatch.
Right. If I don't respond to this stuff,
right.
If I just say, I'm not going to respond to that. Well, that's waiver, and I've now agreed that these things happened, which are criminal offenses, which are disbarable offenses.
Right. You need a job.
Right. I'm just like, are you insane? Of course, if you're going to accuse someone, if you're going to accuse a good man of domestic violence and child abuse and perjury, fabrication of evidence, and tax fraud,
let's throw that in there.
Right. Oh, and right, I'm surprised you didn't accuse me of stealing my kitchen sink.
You don't put down the toilet seat. He's a jerk.
Right. I know. He's throw him away. He stole that kitchen sink. All right. Okay. So if you don't respond to these things, right, then it becomes adjudicated, right? Then the thing becomes, the issue has already been decided. The legal term for that is res judicata. All right. And then, then there's like, well, okay, you've committed these, criminal offenses, these issues of moral turpitude. You don't get to be a lawyer anymore. So no faster way to create an enormous amount of conflict between the parents than to accuse, a good man, particularly a lawyer, of a whole bunch of things that
Sean is a lawyer.
Right. That not only are going to cause chaos between him and his soon-to-be ex-wife, but, put his livelihood at risk. Right. And what's going to be the obvious result of that? Well, now we're off to the litigation races. Right. And, now we're going to be litigating whether or not any of these things are true. And so that's what happened.
Okay.
Right?
So shit show. Now go from shit show and then expand on it.
Well, here's where it gets worse.
Go.
Yeah. So once she comes out of the gate, she files this motion for temporary orders that accuses me of everything, doing all of these horrible things, everything except for stealing the kitchen sink. Literally, not to be glib about it, she basically accuses me of all of the things that you can accuse someone of, short of the sex related offenses. Okay? Well, the judge that we have assigned to the case, right? She's what's called a baby judge, because she's only been on the bench for about 12 weeks. She has no family law experience. She's a former prosecutor. All right. So she, her only experience with, domestic violence is, predominantly prosecuting domestic violence. So she's seen probably a lot of actual domestic violence, but she hasn't probably seen a lot of, false allegations of domestic violence used in order to get advantage in family court. Because that's not what she did in her professional career beforehand. And she's only been on the bench for 6 weeks or 12 weeks. Okay. She then winds up making a series of decisions that all the way back in 2017 to today, right? That in my opinion are, judicial errors. I mean, incredible judicial errors that cause massive problems down the line.
Right.
Okay. But again, that's not uncommon. And part of what it is that I'm trying to accomplish, by telling my story, is also to educate people about this.
Right.
So step number 1, all right? When you get a case like this, if they accuse you of something like this, the very first thing you want to do before a single motion is filed in front of your judge is you want to go research your judge, right? You want to find out who they are. That's a mistake that I made. I found out that she was a former prosecutor, but I did not know for the hell ride that I was in for in high conflict divorce, because that's not my area of law. Right. I didn't know that. I didn't understand that it was a real serious problem that our assigned judge had no experience in family law. Zippo. So that's lesson number 1 to people who are about to go through this nightmare.
Do they allow medical professionals who just get out of medical school to do brain surgery?
My best friend's a brain surgeon.
Oh, I was making a joke, and it's even funnier because
Yeah, he did. I think he did a 12-year residency.
Right. Right, because it's important.
Yeah,
it's very important when you have someone's lives or life in your hand that you have experience handling it.
Right.
Go ahead.
So she files this motion, right, filled with false allegations. Importantly, she has a statement supposedly from our son's therapist that says. Supposedly from our son's therapist that says that the time that our son's time with me is he's not doing well, and that he wants less time with me. We'll eventually find out that's a lie.
Yes.
But she's got this statement. Okay. And she's and I know this is I know this is profanity false.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure, I do too.
So, right. And I know that the things that she's put in her motion about these things that I supposedly did, I know that they're not true either, because I lived the experience.
Right.
So shortly, I immediately go out and hire an attorney. All right. And shortly after that, I head off to the King County Courthouse, and I start researching opposing counsel. Okay. Lesson number 2.
And thank you, Sarah, for putting up Sean's lessons. Sarah is the young lady who messaged me, Sean, about CPS earlier, and she's on the broadcast, and she's very helpful. So she's putting up your lessons as you state them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So lesson number 2, you want to go and research opposing counsel. Now, it depends upon which county you're in and what sort of system they have. That can either be easy or that can be hard. In King County, it's Seattle. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Fortunately, opposing counsel's got an unusual name, so I was able to do a search in filed opinions about her, find cases that she had taken to the appellate level, and then find citations to what underlying trial level case that was, get a handful of those, and then off to the clerk's office I went. I spent 3 days inside of the clerk's office reading the entire docket filings of opposing counsel's cases. Thousands of pages of materials filed in motions in cases that she had represented. And from that came a few things. Number one, if you've got opposing counsel that I'm just going to use her because that's opposing counsel is a her, that her docket filings in her cases run to hundreds of cases, you've got a real problem. Because that's a person who creates high conflict in order to generate billable hours.
Sean's an attorney.
And in the research that I found, several cases where, we've got docket filings that are numbered in the 700s or so. So, when you file your summons and complaint, or when you file your divorce petition, that's docket filing number 1. If you file a motion after that, all right, a motion for temporary orders, or, a motion for, whatever, that's going to be docket filing number 2. When you've got 600 and 700 of them,
God,
right, you've got somebody who aggressively over litigates the issues, because ultimately in the end, when you've got divorcing parents, you have 2 or 3 legal issues. You've got number 1, right? A parenting plan in the best interest of their children. And number 2, equitable distribution of the marital assets. Those are the issues. It doesn't, I could be married to you, right? And we could be divorcing, and it would be the same 2 issues, right? You got an attorney who, regularly has hundreds of docket filings. That's an attorney that creates artificial conflict so they can pad their wallets.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, when I did that, I learned some really, really scary and terrifying things. But I also got a blueprint, to a certain extent, of what counsel's tactics were. And I found out that what she does is that she always makes allegations of domestic violence. Doesn't matter whether she's got any evidence of it or not. She makes those allegations. That's what happens. Okay. I found evidence of children who have become suicidal because of the conflict that was created inside of their family. I found evidence of, endemic dishonesty, overwhelmingly, over and over and over again. Other attorneys, other opposing parties are accusing my wife's attorney of lying, fabricating evidence, of unethical and aggressive discovery tactics. Right? I literally filled up a 4-inch binder full of printouts of some of the most egregious examples. Like in one case, I found that she set a discovery conference. So, if I sue you, then you're going to send me some documents and say, answer these questions, produce these documents. All right. That's discovery. That's the discovery phase of a lawsuit. Then, if you don't answer them, correctly, we're supposed to have a discovery conference. And then after the discovery conference, we can file a motion to the court to get the court to force you to answer my discovery. Okay. In one instance, she sets a discovery conference with opposing counsel on 1 minute's notice. Right? I've been involved in insurance litigation for, 13 years at that time, and I'd never seen anything even remotely similar to that. In 2011, she was investigated for witness intimidation by a police department. Okay? God. Going off, and researching opposing counsel, reading everything you possibly can get your hands on, gives you sort of a little bit of a roadmap of the, hellstorm that you're, about to go through. And I'm convinced, because other guys that I have, gotten to know, that she, other victims of Miss Zeike have, horrible things have happened, and they wound up in jail, right? They've basically been run out of state, right? All sorts of, just, appalling things that have happened to them, right? And I'm like, well, that hasn't happened to me yet.
Right.
Right. And I think that part of the reason why that hasn't or didn't happen to me, even though they've tried, is, simply because of that level of research.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's lesson number 2, right? You've got to research your opposing counsel. Okay.
Boom.
All right. Now, I'm following my little template.
You want me to pull that up?
No, it's okay. I got it.
Okay.
I got it. Okay. All right. So the next thing to do is back to my story. So, we've got this motion for, temporary orders where she comes along and she breaches the 50-50, plan that we've got, accuses me of all these horrible things, right? And then, now the court's going to have to sort this mess out. All right. Well, Miss Zeike is happy as a clam because she now knows she's got another money-making case, right? She's going to be able to drain a middle-class family of, basically everything they've got, all right, and convert it into her, right? She's got this client that is, malleable and manipulatable, right? So she can, basically sell her whatever storyline it is that she wants to sell her, and her client is going to say, okay. All right. So we're going to get a GAL. All right. So
tell people what a GAL is.
So a GAL, guardian ad litem, fancy lawyer Latin words for, a person whose job is to determine what is the best interest of the child. Okay. So in our case, we've got a court order that appoints a GAL, that requires us to appoint a GAL. And that GAL has been ordered by the court to investigate certain issues and then report back to the court what they find for the purpose of creating a parenting plan in our son's best interest.
Right.
Okay. I went off and found, all right, a experienced, qualified social worker who had experience in mental health issues and high conflict divorce, and understood these sorts of important issues that happen inside of these high conflict cases. She wasn't available for like a week or so, and our baby judge basically allowed opposing counsel to simply pick whomever she wanted. Now, opposing counsel had suggested certain names. She'd suggested 3 names from a list, and she then just picked one. All right, but she had basically suggested the names. My attorney fought with her about the names that were suggested, right? And but she was able to suggest the names. She was able to put those names onto the list, and then because our judge just didn't want to deal with the issue, and that's frequently a problem you're going to see. The judge basically told her, just pick one. You get to just pick one. Well, so she picks one who appears to be, qualified to do this job. Well, turns out, we find out, years later, that she's got this extensive relationship with the GAL. She's known her for years. She's worked on her in many cases where she served as GAL. Some cases even overlap my case. All right. It appears that they went to the same synagogue together for a while, right? They run in the same social circles. They know each other very well. All right. Well, so she gets to pick that person. All right. So that's a lesson right there. Stacking the deck, right? If opposing counsel is suggesting people, and you've got to seriously question, especially if you've got any inkling that opposing counsel might be unethical, right? You've got to seriously question, why is she suggesting this person? Several years ago, the Seattle Weekly, so it's a small local paper, ran an article where they went in depth into the family law issues inside of King County, and they were exploring a case called Bubernack. It was largely based on Bubernack,
right?
Which is a case that wound up in the Washington Court of Appeals. And the reporter who wrote the article, her name is Nina Shapiro. It ultimately, the article that she wrote was called "Ripped Apart," and it became at one point the most cited and most linked article ever written on the Seattle Weekly, and created just a firestorm locally, and then eventually got pulled. But what she called this group of people a small cottage industry of professionals. Now, in the film Divorce Corp, right, and in the book Divorce Corp,
yeah,
they go through that exact problem pretty well. All of these people have worked with each other,
right?
The lawyers that know the bad apple lawyers, the family law lawyers that know the bad apple lawyers, they often don't want to out them. They often don't want to file bar complaints against them, because your case and your family is going to go away, and they're going to have to work with those people again in the future. So it's all about the relationships, right? But they also be able to, because they've known each other and they work with each other, they're able to speak in code to each other. Mm-hmm. They're able to say, the Kuhlmeyer case is just like the Bubernack case, or just like the Smith case, right? Whatever. But it's ultimately, it's about stacking the deck, right? It's not about getting to the very first rule of civil procedure, which is the rules are supposed to be used for a just administration of every case, right? It's not about the issues of justice, right? It's about creating the conflict in order to generate the attorney's fees, right? In order to line their pockets with the wealth of the family.
Is this considered? Could you consider this coercion and extortion?
I call it a corruption of collusion.
Okay.
So, remember I talked about there's no way to rationalize what's the provable facts of what's happened in my case, right? With what we know, without including some of these words, and I call it a corruption of collusion. It's not the kind of corruption like, here's a bag of money, rule the way I ask you to.
Right.
Although we know that happens, from time to time, mm-hmm. right? I don't know how widely that happens, here. I call it it's a corruption of, oh, we all know what's going to happen. We've done this many times before. This case is just like that case before. They've worked with each other so much and so closely that they don't even realize that they have become corrupt.
Right.
In any other situation, right? The people who are involved, we would look at that and go, that's a form of corruption. But to them, they just, it's like literally like, how dare you, suggest that, because I've worked with this person many times before, that I am, favorably disposed or favorably biased to what it is that they would say.
Right.
Well, maybe it's because you've worked with them many times before.
Yeah.
Okay. So the GAL comes along. The GAL does, an investigation, right? Remember, she's, apparently buddies with opposing counsel. Not surprisingly, she issues a decision. She issues a report. A report says, I'm supposed to go off and get a psychological evaluation. My ex-wife doesn't have to have one, even though
I'm in your boat, buddy.
Right. Okay. My ex-wife, needs to go off and get an alcohol evaluation, but she doesn't need to go get a psychological evaluation. I got to go get a psychological evaluation. Now,
yeah.
So my ex-wife goes off and gets an alcohol evaluation. Well, unbeknownst to me, I didn't find out, learning later, there's two kinds of alcohol evaluations. Right? Okay. One alcohol evaluation is the one that they give you for drunk driving. Okay. Which is really about, are you a serious alcoholic? Do you drive drunk all the time?
Right.
Or was this, an occasional problem that you have, or a one-off thing?
Yeah.
Right? You go in, you answer a few questions on a questionnaire, right? How often do you drink alcohol? right? You take 3 piss tests, right? And, then they, dispense their, alcohol evaluation.
Sure.
Okay. Well, here's a fun tidbit. As opposed to other recreational drugs, alcohol, if you can control your alcohol consumption to the degree that you don't drink every single day, like if you have the ability to stop drinking for 3 or 4, 5 days or whatever, right?
Weeks, months,
years,
right?
Right. But what is often called a maintenance alcoholic, right? A high functioning maintenance alcoholic. If that is the kind of alcoholic that you are, so you can stop drinking for several days, you can beat that form of an alcohol assessment, because all you got to do, right, is drink a crap load of water, right?
Yeah.
And make sure that your UAs don't happen until 3 days after you've had your last drink.
Right.
Okay. So, if you get a urinalysis on a Thursday, all right, that you can probably safely, have, drink basically as much as you want on Friday night. Okay. And then starting on Saturday, drink unbelievable amounts of water. Right. And then even if your next UA is next Tuesday, it'll still be out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And because the documents that you fill out are all self-reported, right? There's no independent cross-checking. Okay. Now, an alcohol assessment for a family law alcohol assessment is a radically different thing.
Right.
Right. Not only are you getting everything that you get from the drunk driving one, where you're getting random UAs, right? And you have to fill out all the forms, but the people who are doing the alcohol assessment have to interview collateral sources like me or like other people, who have actual knowledge, about your drinking.
Right.
Right. Okay. Well, which kind do you think my ex-wife wound up taking?
I want to go with the third option.
Right. And when I pointed that out to her to the GAL and said she didn't take a parenting plan alcohol assessment, right? The GAL was like, well, I've got doubts about, an alcohol assessment that's only based upon, self-reported. But what am I going to do? Right. And I'm like, what you're going to do, what you should do, Nancy Wheel, right? What you should have done, Nancy, right, is require that she actually get a parenting plan alcohol assessment. Oh, and rocket science, Nancy. Maybe you should have ordered that she get a psychological evaluation, because you know why? Because you were ordering me to get a psychological evaluation. Maybe you should require that both parents get the same assessments, right? Maybe if you'd read the Washington State Guardian ad litem, manual on how to conduct an investigation, maybe if you followed that, Nancy, you would actually know what the fuck you're supposed to do.
It came with a keychain and a coffee mug, right? That whole thing. When they read that, then they get like a sticker,
right,
and a patch,
right?
Yeah,
right. Yeah, you incompetent GAL, and you want to sue me for defamation? Bring it on, lady.
Gall.
Okay, so the GAL.
You do want to show your exhibits before the show's over, right? You do want me to show these things.
Oh yeah. How are we doing?
I mean, we got about 10, 15 minutes.
Oh, geez.
So if you want to do what we all should have done, which is wrap this up. I'm just kidding. I mean, you sent me these amazing things.
So let me look at my notes here and figure out how I can abridge this. Okay.
Segue.
All right. Okay. So then I think I'm just going to speed this up.
Yeah.
All right. So then we move into arbitration. Or we actually go into mediation, and then we change to agree to that to become arbitration. Now, that's probably the worst mistake of my life. Agreeing to convert the mediator into the arbitrator. Because, yet again, Years later, I would find out that there were all of these connections and relationships between the GAL and the mediator turned arbitrator, opposing counsel and the arbitrator. Again, it's about stacking the deck and these pre-existing relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the arbitrator, the psychological evaluation on me comes back. All right. And, it basically says that, I'm pretty honest, that I'm actually extraordinarily honest, that I don't have a diagnosable mental health issue, that I don't have any personality disorders, that the only mental health issues that I've got is probably ADHD, anxiety, and stress, that my personality profile is that I like to flirt, and that I can be a little bit inappropriate.
Man, you sound like me.
Right. Yeah. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I will flirt with anybody. I'll flirt with an 80-year-old lesbian.
He flirted with me a couple times, but we're not going to get into that. Yeah.
You're looking pretty good, buddy.
I know, it's the hat.
Right. So basically the psychological evaluation says, Sean's a normal guy. There's nothing wrong with him.
Yeah, right? You're a goof.
Right. I used to be a professional clown.
Yeah.
Right.
You're opening up Pandora's box right now. Let's get to your stuff.
Right. So, and then it's, but so again, and it's like, but there's these other issues that, there's some other things going on with Isabel and things going on inside this family that really should be investigated, because he's not lying. Oh, and by the way, everything that Isabel said about that therapist is a complete lie, because she interviews the shrink interviews the therapist, and the therapist comes along and says, no, Isabel completely lied about everything I had to say. Well, counsel, in order to cover up that fraud, files a motion to suspend my residential time because I got a speeding ticket, which ultimately would be dismissed for lack of evidence. And the arbitrator, who's worked with her many times before, grants it.
Oh.
So literally, the father-son relationship gets de facto terminated
from a speeding ticket.
That
was later reduced.
That was later dismissed.
Uh-huh. Say that again. Say it again.
Yep.
A father and son relationship. Go ahead.
Gets de facto terminated because of a speeding ticket, which was ultimately dismissed for lack of evidence.
Great. That's what we're doing in family courts. Two attorneys and their children.
Right. And remember, I said at the beginning of this that I don't say things unless I have evidence for them.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So I've got a court order that says that the reason why I've been suspended is because, of this criminal citation for speeding, right? And a bunch of other bullshit, that's in there. But literally, that's what it says. And when you read the arbitrator's email on the subject, where she's suspending my residential time, she says, and I quote, based on the facts as outlined in the speeding ticket.
That's embarrassing to type.
Yeah.
Like they were typing it and didn't feel some sort of way.
Right. But everybody on this side of the fence, everybody inside of the shared parenting umbrella talks often about how, these really crazy ass things happen inside of family law. And they're like, oh, that can't possibly happen.
Oh yeah.
Right?
We're living it.
I'm here to tell you, right? It's absolutely illegal that a parental relationship can be effectively terminated over something so insignificant. I mean, case law in Washington State is profanity crystal clear that if you're gonna do something like that, it has to be measured. It has to be in relationship to the danger. So if the worry was that I'm a dangerous driver, then relating it to here's how we're going to restrict Sean's parenting as it relates to driving. No, they just suspend it. All right. So the arbitrator issues a decision, and the decision is, just another, continuous disaster. The case manager that we're supposed to have, the person who's supposed to do supervised visitation, has a heart attack. So I'm not able to start supervised visitation until she actually issues her decision. She issues her decision, and I had been screaming for months saying, we're about, I'm going bankrupt. I can't afford any of this stuff, right? It's costing me hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's costing me more money than I make that year. Okay. If you don't follow a very clear path back from bankruptcy, I'm going to go bankrupt. She issues a decision where she gives my ex-wife all of our retirement. She gives her all of the equity in the house.
What in the world?
She assigns almost all the debt to me. She sets this inflated value on the value of my law firm, which has just been hammered over, 2 years of unethical bad faith litigation. Right. And she creates this parenting plan with these phases that are supposed to, walk me back to a normal residential schedule. And then importantly, what she does is she tells unethical opposing counsel that she's supposed to draft the court orders to be in line with the arbitration decision.
Right.
Okay? That's in the arbitration decision. Counsel is ordered to draft the orders in line with the arbitration decision and circulate those orders so that we can all see them, and then that the orders that are presented to the judge, right, are in line with the arbitration decision. Turn to page 2.
Let's do that. Let's turn to page 2.
Okay, stop right there. Okay.
Here we are.
So no, back down. Just go down just a little bit to see the first figure 1. Right there.
Gotcha.
Stop. Further down. Right.
Figure 1. Right.
Top of the page.
My fault.
Top of the page. You see that where it's status of the marriage? Okay. So the arbitrator issues this decision, right? And draft orders circulate. The last copy of the orders that the arbitrator sees, right, in the findings of fact, see that figure 1, findings of fact and conclusion of law, section 6, status of the marriage, right? That says the marriage is irretrievably broken. That's the standard language everywhere. Okay. After that draft order, the arbitrator sends a letter to opposing counsel that says you can make certain changes to the draft orders that you've got. All right. And then here's a pre-signed certification page that says, I certify that the the attached, draft orders comply with the arbitration decision.
Right.
The arbitration decision is like 160 pages of shit. Okay.
Just words.
Copy and paste crap, right?
Yeah. Templates.
That no busy judge wants to read. What they want to read is, 3 sets of orders, a findings of fact, a parenting plan, and a child support order. They don't want to read, hundreds of pages of garbage. Okay. Yeah. So what happens? She gives her this pre-signed certification page. Opposing counsel turns around and rewrites the findings of fact. And now, magically, that is the new paragraph for section 6. And if you look at that bolded section there, right? It's not on my screen, but that right. The court finds, okay, the arbitrator never sees that.
Right.
Never saw that. I never saw that before it was presented to the judge. Nothing. You read that paragraph, and that paragraph says that Sean's, an abuser, that he's litigating in bad faith, that he's using bankruptcy to leverage, to relitigate the status of the marriage, parenting, restraints to be, all of that stuff, all of that language comes out of unethical opposing counsel's head and goes onto the page. I never see it. The arbitrator never sees it. She takes that pre-signed certification page and she slides it across the judge's desk to get the judge to sign it.
Okay. So snuck that in there. Now, I do have a question. When orders are created or any documents are created, are they supposed to be seen by you and read through before a judge signs it? Or can it just be signed by a judge before both plaintiff and defendant and opposing counsels witness the document?
Yeah, they're supposed to be seen by you.
So if an order was signed by a judge and let's say you or I didn't see our court order and it was signed, that's a problem.
That's a problem.
Okay, good. I have a problem.
Right.
You have a problem.
Right. That's literally fraud on the court. That's
Sounds
literally
good.
forgery, because she's taking the arbitrator's document. She's taking the document that the arbitrator says this is okay, and she's not doing those changes. She's doing far more than those changes, and she's sliding that across the judge's desk, and now that's become the court's order.
Okay.
So now, so what she does from that is she takes that forged language and then she covers up her fraud. Wait just a second.
Oh, I'm waiting.
Her fraud, right? By relating back all the subsequent orders come back and say, the court has previously found that Sean's a bad guy. The court has previously found Sean's litigated in bad faith. Well, no, the court didn't previously find that.
Right. It was just thrown in there, written.
No, Miss Zeike, you unethical POS.
Yeah.
Right? No, what happened was that you forged the orders and you slid them across the desk of our judge that didn't have any experience and didn't want to read the arbitration decision, and you were able to, just slide along on your fraud. So we litigate some more. All right. So there's another danger sign for all of you who are watching this now. These are the sorts of things you want to look for. This is what an unethical attorney does.
Boom.
Right. So then we wind up. So then immediately after the court order goes into effect, I have no contact with our son. I start writing him letters because that's the only thing I'm allowed to do. And the letters are supposed to be approved by the case manager that my ex-wife is refusing to agree to employ, even though she's court ordered to employ them.
Right.
She files a motion for contempt against me. So I'm going to go through this again. She files a motion for contempt against me because I'm writing letters to our son, which is allowed by court order, which isn't approved by the case manager. She's refusing to obey the court order to employ.
So she files a complaint based on her bad behavior.
Right.
And you're doing what you're allowed to do.
Right.
That's psychotic.
It is psychotic. It's also
That's crazy.
It's also called circular reasoning.
Yeah.
Right. But, it flies, right? Because, our judge doesn't really have any experience in this, has never really seen this stuff before. This stuff does not happen in criminal law.
Baby judge.
When this stuff does happen in criminal law, very bad things happen to attorneys who do those sorts of things. So it's not surprising my judge has no experience in this.
Right.
Because she'd never seen it before in her career. Well, we go through the contempt hearing. They hold me in contempt, right, which is a big problem. And then we go into the contempt review hearing. And then we're in the review hearing. Guess what happens?
Ooh, I want to know.
I sit down at the desk, and opposing counsel, yes, this is it. Opposing counsel makes this fun gesture to me.
She's cute.
Isn't she?
She's pretty. Nice? Is she married?
Well,
I like the lines. I like the lines in her hair.
Right. Yeah.
What's she holding there?
Yeah. A legal pad. Right. Oh, she's holding a legal pad. Right. Yeah. So she does this in a courtroom filled with spectators in front of judicial staff moments before the judge walks in.
This is cute.
Isn't it? This is outrageous.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely outrageous. Judges have been suspended for flipping people off in public, let alone inside of a courtroom.
Gosh.
Right?
All right.
But this is what she does. Okay? This is how she, this is what she thinks is appropriate. This is what she, how she feels like, opposing parties should be treated.
Did you request a psyche valve for her? Because this is a little cuckoo. This is someone with an emotional issue.
Yeah, I mean, the part of the problem, you're right, you're absolutely right. And one of the things they teach you in sort of law school is, you've got to be really careful when you're interacting with your clients, because it can be remarkably easy for you to become ingrained in it with your client, that your relationship with your client can become unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Sure.
And that you can see their issues as your issues. Now, I don't know if that's what's going on between her and my ex-wife, but this behavior, right, is far outside of the realm of what an attorney is supposed to do.
Pretty personal.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Okay, Now, meanwhile, while that's happening, my ex-wife is doing what's called restraining order abuse. Now, this is a big, yeah, this is a really big one, and listeners really need to pay attention to this. She's got a restraining order, right? Because they hand them out like, candy on Halloween, and because judges don't want to get this wrong, right? They don't want to wind up, on the evening news. So, at one point, my ex-wife files a police report against me, and you can go down a little bit there and you can
now
see.
Quick question, because I know you said you want to do the ethical thing and don't want to say too much. Does this have names on it? I forget that you don't want displayed.
It does have names on it. All of this is in the public record.
Okay, I just wanted to ask a question. Okay.
Right. Okay.
All right.
So it does have names on it, right? Okay. But basically, we don't need to do too much here, other than to just show the fact that she files a police report against me, where she claims that I am at her work trying to talk to her on November 13, 2018. In actuality, I'm here in my office 5 miles away talking to the building manager in my office. Okay. So she files this police report. Now, perhaps she was mistaken initially. Perhaps there was someone who looked slightly like me inside of her building. At the time, I didn't even know where she worked. Turns out she works in an office building downtown. But I didn't know that. Right. I didn't know where she worked. Right. But regardless, I'm sitting here in my office, right, trying to get work done so that I can earn money, so that I can pay, child support and all of the other obligations against, that I've got. Right. And be a responsible person. Meanwhile, she's telling the police that I'm somewhere I'm not. All right. So let's go down.
Okay.
All right. So you move down on the next one. Right. Well, here we go. This is real fun. Okay. So this is restraining order abuse. Now, the reason why they're doing this is because if you get a restraining order issued against you for any reason whatsoever, and then you violate that restraining order, violating that restraining order, getting a conviction of violating that restraining order is statutorily defined as domestic violence. It's a way that you can label someone as a domestic violence abuser without ever having to prove any violence ever happened.
So violating a false allegation restraining order can make you guilty of domestic violence.
Right. There's been no review of the restraining order issued against me. There's been the arbitrator they litigated a 1-year restraining order, which I didn't oppose too much because I was like, we need a kind of a break. And the arbitrator, sua sponte, because she's got this existing relationship with all of these people, just decides to make it 5 years. Just out. Right. And I can't get anyone to pay attention to that. We didn't litigate 5 years. We litigated 1. Right. But so they impose a 5-year restraining order against me, which clearly violates case law because it also restrains me from contacting my kid.
Oh my God.
Not just her.
And that's the point of it.
That's exactly the point of it. Create conflict.
Yep.
Because that creates attorney fee billing hours, which lines the unethical attorney's pocket. Now,
there we go.
Right, and here is the official building security camera review with my ex-wife.
Yes.
So 2 days after she files the police report against me, she's in security office reviewing the video, right? Meanwhile, charges are moving forward against me with the Seattle Municipal Court, right? And right here, video footage of the events described were reviewed, and she could not identify or see Mr. Kuhlmeyer in any of the camera footage. So I'm not there, right? I'm not there. But does unethical opposing counsel pick up the phone and call the cops and say, hey, a mistake was made. Sean wasn't there. You need to stop, the criminal charges against him? No, she doesn't.
Nope.
Does my ex-wife do that? No, she doesn't do that.
No, they want you to fix the lie.
Well, what they actually do is they actually probably hope that I'm never going to find this stuff, right? They're probably like, oh, we're just going to roll the dice, right? And maybe it'll stick, maybe it won't stick, right? So I get criminally charged for a crime that I did not commit, and I ultimately beat that because I'm able to prove to the prosecutor, look, I'm not there. And the prosecutor literally produces this document.
Oh my God.
Okay. And I still can't get the courts to pay attention to it. Okay. Finally, the police start to pay attention to it, and they submit a case against my ex-wife for prosecution for filing false police reports. Again, my ex-wife and I didn't start in this place. We started in a very positive place, but now we're filing police reports against each other,
right?
Because of this insanity that her unethical attorney has created.
Right.
So the next document shows you where the prosecutor's office comes along and says, well, the statements by the evidence that Sean's got, makes it pretty clear that, he wasn't there, and, draws real doubt on, her, Isabel's, truthfulness, but, we think that she might be able to beat the charges, on a reasonable doubt standard. Okay. Right. Meanwhile, I'm writing to opposing counsel saying, your client has filed a false police report against me. I've been criminally charged for stuff that I didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I've gone through this process. You've created all of these. These are ethical violations.
Right.
You need to correct these statements. Right. You need to put this right. Stonewalling.
Yeah.
Since the day she filed her motion, I've basically not been able to get an answer to anything ever. So
right.
That's I don't know what lesson we're up to now. 5, 6, who knows?
Oh,
Stonewalling. Yeah. Stonewalling is a way to create conflict, again, between the parents.
Right.
Okay. By not answering anything, you drive the other person crazy, right? Because they can't get any answers to any problems.
Yep.
Right. And on top of that, maybe they will go off and they will do something stupid or make some sort of mistake.
Yep.
Right. And then you get to go, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
That's unethical too. I could send you 30 disciplinary cases from across the country that talk about the fact that stonewalling is unethical. Sure. I mean, that stonewalling, is an attempt to resolve the issue on something other than its merits.
Mm-hmm. Which is not the purpose of a civil matter or custody matter.
No, it's absolutely
supposed to be on its merits.
Right. Absolutely not.
Okay.
So I sue them. Okay, because I can't get anywhere. I sue my ex-wife and her attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I sue my ex-wife for malicious prosecution, and I sue her attorney for abusive process and for some other claims, which I think we're going to skip now.
Okay.
And in that process, right? I think we'll have to stop. I think we might stop there.
Okay.
In that process, the judge that gets assigned in the civil lawsuit, okay, her name is Honorable Joanna Bender. Well, it turns out, and I didn't find this out until after she's dismissed our case, and just a few days before I have to file a notice of appeal. Her mother is a well-known Seattle family law attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And both Judge Bender, her mother Rita Bender, and my ex-wife's attorney's law partner are all listed together in an article in Super Lawyers magazine from 2013.
Sean, can I interrupt you for a second? We have a phone call, and we're not scripted here, from Ted Bush. Can I answer it real quick? Cash Jackson's attorney, Ted Bush, is on the phone. I'm going to tell him that we're in a live broadcast and see what he needs. Ted, go ahead. You're live, buddy.
Sean?
I'm still on with Sean. We're going to finish up in about 5 minutes. You coming on next?
Yeah. Why don't you give me a call, Chris?
Okay, I will. I'll give you a call in a few minutes.
John.
What?
I think he said best of luck, or he loves you, or I don't know what he said. I'll ask him later. You can ask him later. Do you want to join us later for the update of Cash Jackson's case?
Sure, I'll stay on.
Yeah. We'll sign off of this one and in about 5 minutes, let you finish up. And then we're going to get an update from Ted Bush, Cash Jackson's attorney, and Sean's going to join us. So tune back in here in a few minutes.
Okay. So the judge in our case has, I find out that she's got all of these pre-existing relationships with, the defendants and witnesses in the tort case against them.
Mm-hmm.
She winds up dismissing my tort case against my ex-wife and her attorney under this brand new statute in Washington State about abusive litigation. It's supposedly about the idea that some litigants use the legal process in order to harass their former partner. And Washington State's statute is modeled on Tennessee statute, and neither state has a case that interprets this, that interprets this new law. And so she's wound up dismissing our case. And, so now we're going to go back to the Court of Appeals again on yet again another legal issue. And this time it's going to be, a legal issue with all of these fundamental due process issues.
Right.
About, what do you do when your ex-wife files a false police report against you, which, and we didn't get to this, but she hasn't just done this once. She's done it twice.
Right.
I've gone through the criminal process twice for crimes that I didn't commit.
Right.
Filed multiple false police reports against me. What do you do when your ex-wife files false police reports against you and costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars and forces you to go through the criminal process for something you didn't do? Right? What is your recourse? How do you both clear your name and get some recompensation for that? What do you do? Well, there's a tort for that. It's called malicious prosecution. Right? But now what they're doing is they're relabeling anybody who litigates. So anybody who litigates as an abusive litigant. So that's the real insanity about all of this, right?
Right.
You come along, you pour napalm onto a fire. All right. You create enormous amounts of conflict between the parties. And then if one of them fights back and says, I didn't do these things, right? I'm going to stand up for my rights. You then label them an abusive litigant. That's exactly. This is what happened to you, right? You label them an abusive litigant, and then you curtail their fundamental due process rights in order to keep them from litigating. I mean, the absolute insanity about all of this is that I have a history degree. As a historian, the creation of a judicial system is key to creating a civilized society. People need to be able to have a way to access justice. If you don't have a way to do that, the end result is the people take the club and they go next door and they get justice, private justice.
Right.
Right. So now what we do is we create an environment in which, people can't get access to justice. There's nothing you can do. You can just, abuse this other person through the courts because you were the person who cried wolf, domestic violence. You were the one person who was able to, use the system against them. And when they're over here saying, I didn't do these things, you're lying about me, and here's all my evidence about it, we all go, oh, well, we don't want to listen to you because you've got so much evidence, or because you're so loud, or I don't want to read this because it's, well, yeah, it's hundreds of pages of stuff because it's evidence.
That's what it's for. It's supposed to help. You're supposed to listen to it, read it, and allow it.
Right. And how is it, you're like forcing people to prove a negative, right? It's back to the Salem witch trials, right? I saw Chris dancing with the devil in the woods. Well, I didn't do that, right? Oh, well, only people who, dance with the devil deny that, right? It's the same logic, Well, Sean's an abuser, right? I'm not an abuser. I didn't do that. Where's your evidence? Oh, well, only abusers deny their abuse. Are you literally out of your mind?
Right.
And you think that, when that person pushes back, that's somehow evidence of abuse.
Or they need a psyche eval.
or they need a psyche.
Because if you do a podcast without blowing up a building or hurting anyone, you're just using your First Amendment right, and you're articulating and you're saying I'm being abused by the system. They'll go, oh, this is the best system in the world. This is what my judge said, and I think I told you this. This is literally the best system in the world, and without this, it would be chaos. So it's controlled chaos. The abusers have us all controlled nicely. It's not chaotic. Otherwise, he said there'd be anarchy. And her attorney said that I'm anti-establishment. That means take away my kids. I'm pretty sure America was founded on anti-establishment.
Yeah. I know a little bit about your case, and I would invite both your judge. I forgot his name.
My judge at the time, remember my judge wasn't there. He went on vacation right before. So I had a gentleman named Wilkins.
Right. So I would invite
Fred Wilkins.
And I know they like to watch these things. So,
sure.
I'll speak directly to you, Your Honor, Judge
let's get you all up on here like this.
I would invite you on that posit that the United States has the best family law system in the world to read the book Divorce Corp, to watch the film Divorce Corp, and to take a look at particularly the Swedish and the Norwegian models, where they have largely eliminated the ability to litigate divorce without having some serious facts behind it. And then I think you might find that the United States has probably not the best family law system in the world, but maybe one of the world's worst.
We are number one in single parent households, right?
Yeah, we are.
Number one.
We are. I know we need to wrap this up, so I'd like to say a couple of things in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here. So number one is I'm not allowed to talk to my ex-wife. So I can't reach out to her. Unethical opposing counsel has been in control of communication for literally years. So there's no way for her to double check what's being said to her by, her attorney. So, there's no way that I can tell her, there's an easy way to end this conflict, right? We don't need to be fighting about this. We don't, we could be focusing on the best interests of our kid.
Yes.
That, the things that I want in order to do that are really, really reasonable and remarkably easy to do. Mm-hmm. I cannot tell my ex-wife, whom I still care about and whom I view as being someone who is victimized by her attorney, who is being manipulated and used and victimized by her attorney, that she has no reason not to work with me. Now, in another podcast, I can tell you how her attorney's billing structure works, and that will blow your mind as well.
Oh, we're definitely going to do a part two. We're definitely I have my guests come on at least twice because you can't get it all out in an hour.
Right. And I can't, and what I would like to sort of finish up with this by saying is, I hope that someday that, that my son is able to see this and that he's able to take a couple of things away from this, which is, that his father loves him and that, what's happened to his family wasn't his fault. And as a matter of fact, it's not even really his mother's fault. It's really the fault of some people who were, selfishly motivated and, doing these things deliberately in the full knowledge that they're hurting people, hurting me, hurting my ex-wife, and even hurting him. Mm-hmm. And that this is not his fault, and that he shouldn't lose hope that at some point he's going to have relationships with both of his parents, and he'll have a relationship with me, and that I will support his relationship with his mother as much as possible.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's just like you did there, and I gave a heartfelt closing statement in my hearing. It's like, Your Honor, what do you want us to do? We're not hurting anyone. We the evidence is in our favor. What's going on, and if we needed psyche valves, someone would have gotten hurt already. I don't know if you guys know how people who are crazy, what they do, but we're driving people to crazy.
Yeah.
This is psychological abuse. It's child abuse, parental alienation. We're talking about spousal abuse. We're talking about domestic violence by proxy. This is domestic terrorism, and it's being propagated by the legal system, by unethical attorneys, and in part by some judges. We're not saying all attorneys are bad. Sean's an attorney. Okay. We have a lot of attorneys that we speak with. Ted Bush will be on here shortly. They are calling out the bad actors. And whether it's today, tomorrow, or a few years from now, it's the industry's coming down. It's coming down because you got dads. We're not giving up anymore. We have too many tools to fight back. And, you can hang on to your power and your money and your litigation and your lies as long as you possibly can. But we're coming. You can't beat us. You can't.
Well, you and I have talked privately about some of this too, which is the real danger. The real danger to this entire industry is that it does not recognize, it does not recognize that this is the beginning of a social movement, or this is mid steps in a social movement. And this is a country in which atrocities are committed every single day. And the people who are involved in this industry that are fueling and propagating these sorts of conflicts, they are literally playing with people's lives. I mean, suicide is one of the leading causes of death for people in our age bracket, in our social status. Divorced
men, 30 to 45 or whatever, fathers.
Yeah, it's basically middle-aged divorced men who go through a high conflict divorce. Suicide is a leading cause of death. But I call it the dark crossroads. You get to this point where you've got four choices, right? You either litigate, right? Fight to clear your name, fight for your relationship with your kid, right? Walk away, right? Become the deadbeat dad that they want you to be. Okay. Violence, turn the violence, in on yourself, or turn it externally. Right? Those are your choices.
Right.
And so, we put people into these positions, and we're like, and now the thing that I find really damaging about this idea, about this abusive litigation thing, is that you're trying to foreclose the option that you really want people to take, which is to access the judicial system. Right. And instead, you're forcing them into these positions where they feel like, they've got no options.
Right.
In that research that I did on opposing counsel, I met men who were victims of her. And I met men who had gotten to those crossroads, and they had chosen and said, I have to leave.
Yeah.
I just have to disappear. Right. And that means that man misses out on the experience of being a father to his children. I haven't seen my son in 2 years, and that keeps me awake at night. It drives my motivations, right? I have nightmares about it. Okay. I miss him like there is, like no one who hasn't gone through this can't understand. Right. That man misses out on that. But that child misses out on the relationship with their parent. Right. And we are driving people to this point. And it's a miracle there isn't more violence.
Right. We're holding it together, and we're trying to advocate, peacefully and educate ourselves and share. But when we say, hey, we know that this is wrong, they're like, this is the best system the world's ever seen.
Right. Or some variant of screw you, Chris.
Right.
You're anti-establishment, or or because you've got some guy who comes onto your website, comes onto your show, who's got this provocative,
name on his Facebook page.
That's somehow guilt by association with you. And I'm like, what? And what they don't seem to realize, it's like the same thing that this country did not learn about Rodney King.
Mm.
Right? We talked about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
This country had an opportunity to wake up and realize that people of color have a fundamentally different experience with the police sometimes.
Right.
Right? And what did we do? We stuck our heads in the sand for 20 years, right? Until it happens, it keeps happening and happening and happening again. And then it explodes in violence and people wind up dying some more.
And then what do they do when it explodes? But go,
Right.
oh, this is the problem. No, you're the problem.
Oh, I had no idea that was going to happen.
The government and the judiciary and the lawmakers, they don't take accountability for their effect on society. They just blame society and keep making crazy laws that are driving people insane.
Well, that's circular reasoning.
Right. So we got to stop it.
Yeah.
I mean, what else are we here for?
Well, so you plug my new website, which is
let's get on there real quick. Let's go to unethicalkarma.com.
Unethicalkarma.com. It's the beginning of my website. Over time, I hope to build it into more. Right, I'm going to teach people how to research their unethical opposing attorney. Right, and I'm going to ultimately teach them how to be able to file bar complaints against them. How I've got resources on there where you can go and you can look up the ethical rules that govern attorneys in your state. Here's my dog-eared copy, and you read them, because you might see unethical opposing counsel do something, you're like, that feels wrong, right? That
can't be right.
That seems like it could be unethical, right?
It feels like a scabies.
Right, that could be an issue. Well, you know what? It might actually be. And part of the problem is that bar associations, they get bar complaints from people like litigants, who are in family law cases, or like, opposing counsel lied, right? And they don't know how to file a bar complaint that actually gets the bar hearing examination, the initial investigators to look at this and go, there's actually something here.
Right.
They've got an extraordinarily high standard in order to disbar someone. But the case in California, the attorney whose name that I mispronounced at the beginning of the show, right? Giraldi, right? Giraldi, right? Part of what he's facing right now is the fact that so many lawsuits and so many bar complaints have been filed against him over the course of his career that never went anywhere.
Right.
Right. So there's a certain amount of strength in the fact of, of the only way these unethical attorneys be held responsible and accountable is if people are able to be empowered with the information on how to hold them accountable and put it in front of the people whose job it is to hold them accountable.
Right.
Oh, anyway.
Well, let's get you on. I think we're going to get, guys, we're going to sign off here. We're going to start a brand new broadcast, and we're going to be on in a few minutes with an update. If Sean wants to join us and join the conversation, I believe Ted Bush, Cash may be joining us. He's out hanging out with some old Navy buddies. He's in Illinois right now. This was his second day for his court case. Cash is a very public figure, activist, father who hasn't seen his kid in over 3 years, and being alienated and abused by the Illinois Lake County family court system. And we are here to support here at We the Parents. Sean is part of the family now. So we're going to sign off here. Guys, say goodbye to Sean. Go check out unethicalkarma.com and stay tuned for the update number 2 coming up in a few minutes. We're going live with Sean and Ted Bush, and maybe Cash Jackson will be joining us. So we will see you guys in a few minutes. And thank you, Sean, for coming on for this episode of We the Parents.
No, thank you.
Absolutely.